Good morning. It's always so epic, the boom. Love it. Good morning, church. My name is Heather. I'm Pastor Jean's wife. Take care of a lot of the administration here at the church, and on occasion, you know when I'm up here because Jean is wearing shorts. So I do get the privilege to be able to share a message from time to time and to let him wear shorts on occasion to church on a Sunday. So we switch roles. Anyway, we have, as you've seen in our title video, been making our way through Hebrews, where it makes it very clear that Jesus is superior. That song, what a powerful name it is, just gives me goosebumps every single time. Love it. So recently I heard a story about a pastor who decided he wanted to go check in with all of his members, see how they were doing. So during the day, he stopped in, knocked on the door. One of the women answered the door and says, "Oh, Pastor, thanks for coming by." And of course invites him in, because you're not going to not invite your pastor in, and says, "Hey, would you like anything to drink? Come in, sit down. A cup of coffee would be great." Okay. Then she goes into the kitchen and says, "You know, it's so coincidental you stopped by, because I was enjoying that new church app that I just downloaded on my phone. I've been watching the sermon, looking at my Bible. It's been amazing. I cannot believe you stopped by. It's been fantastic." Meanwhile, her phone is on the coffee table in front of the pastor. She's in the kitchen. She's brewing some coffee for him. Little Susie, 4 years old, comes in, pigtails and everything, grabs Mommy's phone, decides to sit down next to Pastor on Mommy's phone. All the while she's in the kitchen talking about how coincidental it is. "That sermon was great. I can't wait to finish watching it." Comes in with coffee, sets it down. "Susie, did you finish watching the sermon with the pastor?" "No, Mommy, I just finished your game and got the new high score." Ugh, fail. So it's really funny how kids know how to use our phone way better than we do. Probably why they invented the little thumb scanner before you get into it. So, many of you know how much I love my coffee. So much so, yes, I brew it very carefully in the morning, either with a French press, or I recently discovered a mocha pot where I have to boil it on the stove. Because I know all good things take time, and I like the strongest brew possible. I had to resist not insisting that we use this title slide. I love it so much that I even have a coffee cup that says exactly what it says on that wall. It was actually my mug that inspired the wall, that running on Jesus and coffee, and I also have a shirt and naps. So when the coffee runs off, I take a nap. Anyway, all joking aside, we actually don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews, but it does get its name because it's like a sermon. It reads like it's to a group of Jewish Christians who are very familiar with the Old Testament, which is why we are using Hebrews as a book to use through which we are looking at the Old Testament. Jean has been taking us through those stories, showing us how in Hebrews it can be referring to a psalm that is also referring to a story in the Old Testament. So we are in 3 places at once. Last week, Jean started to discuss spiritual growth with us, The importance of taking a Sabbath and spending enough time with God. Cramming for tests may work in school, but it does not work for your spiritual life. And as we work our way through Hebrews, Gene has explained to us that there are some really awkward chapter breaks in here, and he talked about the Sabbath last week, and in chapters 4 through 6, there is a character named Melchizedek. I said not it. I'm not talking about that. He's a mysterious figure throughout the Bible, and if you'd like to hear more about him, Wednesday night, 6 p.m., Gene will be going through it in our Bible study. So I have the wonderful task of discussing with you spiritual growth, which is brought up in the second half of Hebrews 5, 11 through 14. There is much more we would like to say about this, but it is difficult to explain, especially since you are spiritually dull and don't seem to listen. You have been believers so long now that you ought to be teaching others. You need someone to teach you again the basic things about God's word. You are like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food. For someone who lives on milk is still an infant and doesn't know how to do what is right. Solid food is for those who are mature, who through training have the skill to recognize the difference between right and wrong. So the author here is getting very frustrated with his audience, telling them they need to grow spiritually and calling them babies. Not the only time we see this happen. Paul, in Corinth, we went through this in our Corinthians series, those crazy Corinthians, calls out the Corinthians there because they're doing everything from pastor worship to getting drunk during the worship service. And he goes on to say, 1 Corinthians 3, 1 through 3. Dear brothers and sisters, the Greek says brothers, but he's talking to both. When I was with you, I couldn't talk to you as I would to spiritual people. I had to talk as though you belonged to this world or as though you were infants in Christ. I had to feed you with milk, not with solid food, because you weren't ready for anything stronger. And you still aren't ready, for you are still controlled by your sinful nature. You are jealous of one another and quarrel with each other. Doesn't that prove you are controlled by your sinful nature? Aren't you still living like people of the world? So here we have two authors in two different books of the Bible expressing the same frustration thousands of years ago about people still needing milk and acting like babies when they should be mature in the faith and able to feed themselves. Now, I can understand how this might seem like a harsh statement, but firsthand in my experience in a lot of areas that I have been in my life, I can kind of understand their frustrations. I'll go into that more later. Remember, last time I was up here, Paul was speaking about the sinful natures. I went through the full list with you. I'm not going to go through them again. Galatians 5, 16 through 24, and Ephesians 4, 20 through 32. As you can see, that is a lot of scripture. I'll be up here all day. So it talks about the sinful nature versus fruit of the Spirit. Some of those highlights are outbursts of anger, quarreling, drunkenness, versus fruits of the Spirit, love, patience, and kindness. Now, in life, we have to work out spiritually, mentally, and physically. We can get assistance from others in order to get to these goals, but at the end of the day, we're the ones who have to put in the work. When it comes to our spiritual growth, we are responsible. We are all given the tools we need in order to grow spiritually. Gene spoke last week about that common phrase among seemingly mature Christians, I am not getting fed. This is something usually heard from those who are mature, usually saying about themselves. New Christians usually don't even know this statement, and when they hear it, it teaches a beginner or true baby Christian a bad habit. In church, especially in Southwest Florida, there is a lot of church shopping and church hopping. Now, mind you, this is for the mature. I'm not saying beginner people who are here first time. We hear many excuses about when people decide to shop or hop between churches. And having been in church leadership for almost a decade now, I've probably heard about every excuse when it comes to this. Now, mind you, this is any church, not just us. Many Christians will make these complaints. I've seen people hop and shop over pastoral changes, a color change on a wall, the air conditioning not being at the right temperature, the room is too dark, the room is too bright, there are the wrong types of cookies being served, someone asked for a speed bump to be removed because it's scratching their Corvette. Someone greeted them too much. Someone didn't greet them enough. The music is too loud. They're the wrong kind of songs. And the list goes on. And I kid you not, these are all real complaints. If I list them all, you might not go home today. And I know you want to enjoy the pizza after service. So Here we are in Hebrews 5, and the author is discussing how people still need milk who should be eating solid food by now. And this comment reminds me of those who complain that they're not getting fed. I could understand almost 2,000 years ago where the only place you could hear the word was in church. You didn't have this conveniently bound book with the Old and New Testament that comes in literally every shape, every size, pocket size, big font, small font, and even waterproof. I have a waterproof Bible I can take in the pool if I want to in Southwest Florida. And we have this wonderful little device that if you actually download the app, you can read it every day, all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This reminds me of the proverb. It's in two places, Proverbs 19:14 and Proverbs 26:15, that says something like this. Lazy people take food in their hand, but don't even lift it to their mouth. This makes me laugh because it makes me think about how someone might complain about starving in a world where Uber Eats actually goes to get you food. They'll even drive through the drive-thru for you at a fast food restaurant and bring you fast food faster. Or having a fridge full of food, refusing to eat what's in there and then complain that you're starving. It has always baffled me how in modern times Christians can complain about not being fed. We have access to the word, our daily bread, more easily now than ever before. Yet, we choose not to utilize it and then blame the church for it, relying solely on a 1-hour service a week to keep us spiritually full for the rest of the week. Now, when we were in our Ephesians series, we saw how Paul discussed unity in the church and growing up in faith. Unity in the body, Ephesians 4:1-4 and 14-16. Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, remember, Paul is in prison when he's writing this letter, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you've been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you have been called to one glorious hope for the future. Paul continues to go on to say in 14, then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. Growing up in the body together. Again, this is a common theme that as a church, we are the body, where each member is part of the body, whether it's the hand, the foot, the arm, the leg. As Paul and Sosthenes basically put it, they put on a puppet show, because remember the crazy Corinthians calls them babies and immature Christians. In Corinth, they start describing the body of the church. 1 Corinthians 12:12-29, I'm going to focus on a smaller part. You can look at the whole thing later if you'd like. 1 Corinthians 12:14-21, one body with many parts. Yes, the body has many different parts, not just one part. If the foot says, I am not a part of the body because I am not the hand, that does not make it any less part of the body. And if the ear says, I am not part of the body because I'm not an eye, would that make it any less part of the body? If the whole body were an eye, how would you hear? Or if the whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. How strange a body would be if it had only one part. Yes, there are many parts, but only one body. The eye can never say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head can never say to the feet, I don't need you. I don't think we'd be standing anywhere. They continue in 25-26. This makes for harmony among the members, so that all the members care for each other. If one part suffers, all parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. It would be just as ridiculous for 3 children in a family to complain, the oldest child demanding to be the youngest and the middle child demanding to be the oldest. No one of them can change the order in which they are born any more than one part of the body can become another part of the body. Each person in the church is a specific part of the body. with Jesus as the head of the body. The church is here for us to corporately worship together, to support one another, to lift one another up, to help one another within our body and the community around us, and also to be the light and examples to bring more people to Christ through love. I know when we decided as a family to start going back to church, we were looking for community, a group of people that we could do life with to get support from and to also support. Jean said last week when we went, it was a half a gym. You could see the basketball lines on the court. It was community that we were looking for when we went in there. Yet, when one person decides to leave the body, either shopping or hopping, they're effectively amputating a part of the body of Christ needed to make up the church. It causes pain to the whole body when that happens. Imagine getting a splinter, and in order to fix it, you decide to cut off your finger. That is the equivalent of having an issue, not working it out, and then leaving your church family over it. Because the church is the body. It is us. It is not the building. It is not the cookies. It is not the chairs. It is not the parking lot, the speed bumps, nothing material. The church is us. And it shouldn't matter whether we are in a comfortable worship center, in a parking lot, or on the beach. I know with Irma a couple years ago, it taught us in our old building about that because we had to worship in a hallway because both of our worship centers suffered water damage. Also, recently during COVID, the only way we could rely on being in church was to stream online and connect on Zoom virtually, which for me, honestly, I thought was so amazing that we had technology during this that we could connect. That happened 20 years ago. It would have looked very difficult and completely different. But in both of these scenarios, it was so fascinating and just heartwarming to me to see how people came together in these hard times. Those of you who were sheltering in Irma definitely know that was quite an adventure during that time. But the world slowed down, both then and recently, a lot. For me, it slowed me down, and it forced me to slow down. Those of you who have known me for a long time know that I go everywhere very, very quickly. I run around. I'm like the road runner. Got to keep up. So being in lockdown was initially fairly uncomfortable, but being forced to slow down, it forced me to evaluate how much time I was spending running around, doing things, versus spending time in prayer and with God. It allowed me to self-reflect and begin carving out more time with Him, creating a healthier and slower routine that was better for my mind, my body, and my spirit, because I thought I was doing it so well. Funny enough, God, as He always does, comes in and says, not so much. He loves to shed light in the darkness. And when we put anything ahead of God, we will always be disappointed because anything other than God is fallible and will always let you down. Remember that we are here to forgive and love one another. We are not supposed to fall in love with the world. We should not mix unrealistic expectations of broken people with the superiority of Christ. The theme of the series, Jesus is superior. He is superior to everything. And if we don't keep Him there, whatever we put ahead of Him, we're making superior to Him. So we must build our relationship both spiritually, vertically, and horizontally. Building up a relationship requires a nice, strong foundation. When the author refers to the basics, the gospel is our foundation, and the stronger we make our relationship with God vertically, the better our relationships will be horizontally, with one another, with Christ in you. The vertical relationship carries all of the weight of the horizontal relationships. And as Christians, we have a wonderful guide for reconciliations. Matthew 18:15 through 18. If another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. If the other person listens and confesses it, you have won that person back. But if you are unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again, so that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. If the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Then if he or she won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. I tell you the truth, whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. Most seasoned and even beginner Christians are familiar with this, Matthew 18, as in order to work out differences no matter what the issue. If you don't like the cookies, just tell us. We'll buy different ones. If you want something other than the pepperoni, please let me know. I'll order it. But unfortunately, in my experience, it happens far less often than it should. In Matthew 18:21-22, then Peter came to him and asked, "Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times?" "No, not 7 times," Jesus replied, "but 70 times 7. So in addition to Matthew 18, not only are we taught to forgive, not just 7 times, 70 times 7. I know you can do the math on it. I'm a numbers person, but obviously it's not literal. Endless forgiveness. It should be far easier to forgive each other within our church given these guidelines, just as I spoke about in the story the last time about the fig tree in Mark 11, where Jesus explains the importance of forgiving others so that you are also forgiven. We need to keep our expectations realistic, and instead of forgiveness, those seemingly mature members end up leaving the body. For those of you who may not know, I've shared several times about being sober for about 6.5 years now. These types of complaints of hopping churches reminds me about when I was new in recovery. I looked for every excuse not to get sober. When I tried starting to get sober in the beginning, I'd go and compare myself rather than identify, making excuses like, "I'm not as bad as them," or other excuses. The meeting time didn't work, the chairs were too hard, the topic was wrong, the speaker was bad, they didn't serve the right kind of donuts, and the list went on and on there as well. There were many excuses I remember making when I first started on my road to recovery when I did not want it to work. But I could not blame my sponsor or my pastor when I was the one who kept picking up the bottle. It was only when I finally got on my face at 3 o'clock in the morning, when my sponsor and my pastor could not pick up the phone, I had to call on the line that always picks up. Him, God. And he was the one who, funny enough, I hadn't called before. But when I finally surrendered to him and asked him for help, I finally received it. And I've been sober ever since then. Thank you. But there's a but. It's not a one and done deal. In order to maintain my sobriety, I have to work at it daily. Just like my salvation, it is given to me, but I'm the one that has to put in the work and maintain the relationship with God and put the work in on a regular basis. And in both areas, in my sobriety and my spiritual life, I have to stay connected to God vertically and stay connected to the people in the fellowship. It's like signing up for the gym, working out the first day, feeling great the first day, and then never going back and wondering why I'm not getting in shape. And how often in our American society do we sign up for a new gym membership, buy the latest diet pill, the workout craze, Zumba, Taibo, PX90? If you said Taibo and you know it, then you're as old as me. Any self-help program, any new workout machine, whether it's a treadmill or a bike, and it turns into a new clothing rack in your bedroom. Sorry, Jean. It is in the 80% that makes a difference in what you do, not the 20%. Any gym or program will work for you when you do what it says consistently. We blame the gym or the trainer for giving us everything we need to make the program work, the other 80%, an app that gives us workouts when we can't get to the gym, a grocery list with an eating plan. And then we don't get in shape. Perhaps it's because we didn't diet properly. Then we go and try another gym, complaining that the last place didn't work, saying things like, "That workout was boring, it was too hard, it wasn't hard enough, the instructor changed." Again, the list goes on. We don't change our behavior and somehow expect better results, and then move on to the next place, blaming the previous gym, program, or trainer all along the way for not working. We are the ones not putting in the necessary work. Funny enough, wherever you go, there you are. And unless you make the change in that 80% time when your gym or trainer are not available, the instructions they give you for that 80% will not work, and you will not get the results that you desire. It's also a lot like going to the dentist. We go for our checkups, and they always ask that magical question, "Do you brush and floss every day?" And we go, "Yeah." Funny how we tend to lie to our dentist, pastor, and trainers. "Sure, I floss every day, starting today, moving forward." And then they start cleaning your teeth and your gums are bleeding, and then you find out you have cavities. Do you blame the dentist because you didn't put in the work every day flossing and taking care of your teeth? They literally even give you a goodie bag with all of the tools necessary. Mine even gives me chapstick, which is awesome. Sometimes you get a little sticker, a mini Slinky, or a dinosaur if someone like Jean needs incentive to go back more often than once a year. Past the goodie bags, if we get those cavities, do we blame that dentist and look for a better one with better TV screens, better music, a better lobby, or maybe a dentist who will tell us not to floss? Generally, we know that unless we take the time out of our day to do what is good for us, even though it may seem time-consuming, we will not get better or get the desired results. Much like being in the Word, it may be hard to start feeding yourself daily. It is the same as taking the time out to floss every day. There's only one person I know who flosses as much as he's in the Word, but I won't say his name. He's in shorts. It requires consistency and time. We are so used to instant gratification and having unrealistic expectations of desired results without putting any of the work in. I know all the time, if you look at those commercials, there's a tiny little disclaimer that says, diet and exercise is necessary in order for it to work. I only read it because sometimes they're funny. But that's an important disclaimer. This is like going to college, never going to class, and then expecting a degree at the end. Consistency is the key for anything working in your life, whether it is church, work, the gym, the dentist, or any relationship. Remember when I said good things take time? We have to put in the time. You cannot expect to stay spiritually fed for a week off of a 1-hour worship service any more than we can expect to get in shape, only working out 1 hour a week, only eating one meal a week, spending 1 hour with our spouse or child, flossing once a year just before your dentist appointment, and expect any of this to work out for you. All right, I think I've beaten you over the head enough this morning. So great, Heather, what do we do about this? Fantastic. How do we start feeding ourselves and grow throughout the week? Action steps. Let's see how we can start growing spiritually regardless of where we are on our journey. Your spiritual journey is between you and God. It is not a competition. You know where you are at, whether you are at the starting line or closer to the finish line. You know where you are. You know what sins are weighing you down. We all know what our own personal sins are. The difference is whether we've asked Him for help with them, because that is the first step. Where you are in your walk is entirely for you to determine. We are not here to take your inventory. We are here to be the body of Christ. That is what we are here for, as a community together, to come together and help one another as a church family. The important part we all play is in exercising all of the parts, the ones that we've been assigned accordingly, so that we can be healthy as a body, as a whole. Now, I know for myself, I do not absorb the Bible just by living with the pastor. It doesn't work that well. It'd be awesome if it did. I actually have to open up the Bible and read it for myself. I have to work on my relationship with God on a daily basis, the same way I do for my sobriety. Now, unfortunately, there is a major stumbling block that I have to overcome on a regular basis before I get to my Bible app. Beating Phoenix in the weekly leaderboard of my favorite game, Blitz. Funny enough, when I was writing this, I was like, what is the name of that game that I've been playing for years? Okay, Blitz. And then I saw that I had to beat Phoenix. Then I finished writing my sermon, and I went back and beat Phoenix. By a lot. Whoever that person is cries every time I do that. So I've decided now I'm going to put my Bible app before my Blitz app. Hilariously enough, it is alphabetical, so that works for me. All of my gaming apps. And yes, I've got my Greek flashcards. I try and do that once in a while. Not very good at it yet, though. Anyway, totally understand it with all the distractions in the world today. Emails, kids, work, gaming apps, sports, errands, school, Netflix, Disney Plus, and the new Mandalorian series. The list goes on and on. We joke in recovery, there are a million excuses, but never one good reason. Much like the proverb, let's get the spoon to our mouth and actually feed ourselves. Start challenging yourself. Start reading the Bible for as much time as you play in your gaming app. You can also put it on audio. Gina has suggested this, not at the 1.5 speed that he does. You can start at the normal speed. Listen while you're driving or cooking dinner or doing something around the house. You don't have to abandon everything to start working on your spiritual life. But for your spiritual growth, you do need to start working on your spirituality in your daily life and in your church life. Again, it's like going to the gym, never going, and expecting to stay in shape. Filling up your gas tank may work once a week for your car, but not for your spiritual life. We need to feed ourselves daily, spending time with God. You can start small. Read a proverb a day while you're drinking your coffee. That's where I started. Choose a book of the Bible to listen to while you're in the car cooking dinner. Small changes over time make large improvements along the journey. If you change your course 1 degree at a time, go a completely different direction. A funny example of that is the Pilgrims were supposed to go to Jamestown, and they were off by like 1 degree and eventually ended up in Massachusetts instead. So it can go for the worse or for the better, but little bits at a time, consistency add up to that marked improvement in the long run. So let's be the body, pick our water bottles, graduate to the spoon, feed ourselves, be examples to others, attraction, not promotion. We're here to support you so that we can teach others to feed themselves through that attraction. We are strong in Jesus and with one another. Remember, our vertical growth and our horizontal growth is necessary. Now may the God of peace, who brought up from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, and ratified an eternal covenant with his blood, may he equip you with all you need for doing his will. May he produce in you, through the power of Jesus Christ, every good thing that is pleasing to him. All the glory to him, forever and ever. Amen.